It's Hyp3r Halloween!
Rounding out this week of sadistic slashers or deranged killers is probably the most sadistic of the bunch, The Devil's Rejects. The Devil's Rejects is Rob Zombie's second film. It continues the story of the Firefly family, the sadistic killers from Zombie's first film, House of a Thousand Corpses. While this is a sequel to House of a Thousand Corpses, I don't believe you need to view the first movie to understand what's going on here, besides for understanding a few references. The Devil's Rejects is a non-stop roller coaster ride from the beginning to the end. It takes place 7 months after the events in House of a Thousand Corpses. The film starts off with police surrounding the Firefly house. Their plan is to capture the family and bring them to justice, given that the Firefly family is responsible for multiple murders and various disappearances. There's a shootout between the family and the cops. One member of the family is killed in the gunfight. 2 members, Otis, played by Bill Moseley, and Baby, played by Sherry Moon Zombie, manage to get away while Mama Firefly, played by Leslie Easterbrook, stays behind to mourn her son's death. She tries to take her own life, but her gun is out of bullets, so the police end up taking her into custody. Otis and Baby steal a car and drive to a nearby motel. They call the patriarch of the Firefly family, Captain Spaulding, to come and help them. Captain Spaulding is of course played by Sid Haig. To pass the time, Otis and Baby torment a small band called Banjo and Sullivan. This is where, assuming you didn't watch House of a Thousand Corpses first, like me, that the viewer sees how sadistic the Firefly family is. They take the band hostage, kill their roadie, and torture everyone there. Otis leaves with 2 of the members from the band to dig up weapons that he buried in the desert, and Baby stays with the remainder. Eventually, Captain Spaulding shows up and they leave. The group ended up killing most of the band, but they leave one to tell the tale of what happened. The sheriff that is pursuing the rejects is Sheriff John Wydell, played by William Forsythe. Wydell is very loose with the rules when it comes to the rejects, since he believes that the ends justify the means. He interrogates Mama Firefly and smacks her around when she's non-compliant, and she eventually admits to killing his brother. In order to bring these criminals to justice, Wydell ends up enlisting the help of 2 bounty hunters called the Unholy Two. The bounty hunters are Rondo and Billy Ray Snapper. These bounty hunters are played by Danny Trejo and Diamond Dallas Page, respectively. Back to the Fireflies, though. The Fireflies end up going to a nearby brothel that's run by an associate of Spaulding's, Charlie Altamont, played by Ken Foray. Charlie ends up letting the group hide out in his brothel. Sheriff Wydell is actually already aware of this plan, though. The next day, Sheriff Wydell approaches Charlie, and he wants Charlie to give up the Fireflies or be killed. And it's at this point we see that Wydell is getting more and more aggressive in order to capture the Firefly family. He even has a dream where his brother tells him to avenge his death. So Wydell does what any sane person would do at this point. He goes back to Mama Firefly and stabs her. Unfortunately for the Fireflies, Charlie does rat him out. Later on that day, we see the bounty hunters go to the brothel and capture the Firefly trio. The bounty hunters bring the Fireflies back to their farmhouse, and Sheriff Wydell proceeds to torture them the same way they torture their victims. The trio ultimately does escape, but they've seen better days. They drive for some time and eventually encounter a police barricade. Faced with the reality that this will only end in one way for them, Otis hands out guns to the rest of the group, and they go charging towards the barricade, guns blazing. All the while, Leonard Skinner's Freebird plays in the background, symbolizing that, despite everything that's happened, the rejects just can't change who they are. And it's honestly my favorite part of the movie. While I contend that this is definitely a fun watch, it's incredibly vulgar and violent. So I guess basically like every other Rob Zombie flick, if you've seen it. The dialogue isn't the best, especially when every other word said is fuck. But again, it's a Rob Zombie flick, and that's pretty standard. Some of the dialogue is very strange as well. Dialogue I'm questioning why it was even added to the film in the first place. For instance, Charlie and his associate Cleavon, who's played by Michael Berryman, drive to a local guy selling chickens. The conversation quickly turns from, "Why do you need a chicken?" to, "Are you gonna fuck that chicken?" It's such a bizarre dialogue exchange, and I wonder why it's there to begin with. I assume comedy, but I don't know, I don't get it. There are some interesting stylistic choices for scene transitions throughout the film. It honestly looks like someone was playing around with Windows Movie Maker scene transitions. I know other filmmakers use similar transitions in their movies, but they either use it consistently or they use it sparingly in the fact that it, matches what's happening at the end of one scene and the beginning of the next. Honestly, to me, it seems like Rob Zombie just chose transitions at random in this movie, which, I don't know, kind of took me out of it. There's also a lot of random slow-mo and freeze frames. I honestly thought that I kept losing my internet and that the video was buffering. Enough about the technical aspects though, let's talk about the Fireflies. As I mentioned, the Firefly bunch are as vicious as they come. The kills in this movie are actually not as brutal as something you'd see from, let's say, a Saw movie, but the actions leading up to it are where it really shines. Otis and Baby really do a number on the bandmates in the motel. I didn't really go into detail back in my plot summary, but let's fix that now. Otis drags one of them out of a shower, kills the roadie in front of them, and he forces one of the ladies to strip for him. The psychological effect he has on them is next level. When Otis ultimately kills the men of the group, he cuts off one of their faces and wears it like a mask. Like I said, these guys are vicious. One thing that Rob Zombie tried to do, in my opinion, is to blur the lines between moral and immoral, especially with the sheriff. The sheriff goes from trying to uphold the law to wanting to capture and kill the Firefly family by any means necessary. It's a similar situation to I Saw the Devil. In order to exact justice, the sheriff skirts around the law. He fully loses himself, though, when he begins to torture the Firefly family. There's also an attempt to make our villainous protagonist sympathetic, especially at the end of the film. The film tries to make us feel sympathy for the Firefly family during the torture scene, and it honestly just comes off as weird. The Fireflies are monsters, but we did go on a journey with them and watch them suffer hardships throughout the movie. Granted, the hardships are in part because they are psychopathic murderers, but we're still experiencing this with them the whole time. At the end of the day, though, none of the characters are good people, with the exception of maybe a few of the band members, so it's really hard to root for anyone. In any case, the cast does an amazing job with each of their roles, and it provides the watcher with one hell of an experience. The Devil's Rejects didn't do great at the box office, but it did garner a cult following. A sequel, 3 from Hell, was made in 2018 and released in 2019. I haven't seen it yet, but I hear that also got mixed reviews. I'm also not sure if the version of The Devil's Rejects that I watched for this review was the theatrical version or the unrated version. Apparently Rob Zombie had to cut the movie 7 times just to get it to an R rating. Like Zombie's other films, The Devil's Rejects is definitely an homage to older horror films, but of course, Zombie gives it its own unique spin on that style of film. It's such an homage to older horror movies that there are a bunch of horror movie legends cast within the film. Ken Foray is known for his character in Dawn of the Dead, Sid Haig, who's been in countless horror films, and Michael Berryman, who is known for his role in the original Hills Have Eyes. Mama Firefly was played by Karen Black in House of a Thousand Corpses. Unfortunately, Karen Black doesn't reprise her role as Mama Firefly in The Devil's Rejects. Don't get me wrong though, there's nothing wrong with Leslie Easterbrook or her performance, and that's not what I'm getting at. I'm just not sure that she's technically a horror movie icon like Karen Black. All of that being said, if you want to watch a slasher film with vicious killers, then look no further than The Devil's Rejects.